Okay, so joining us for what will actually be our first Vox-pop at the British Society for 18th Century Studies is Professor Noelle Gallagher from the University of Manchester, Professor of Literature Studies. It's been a while since we've had some literature folks on the show, actually. Firstly, thank you for agreeing to do this,
my
because so far we've
pleasure.
had nobody, so
My
this might be the
pleasure.
only one we do.
That's not a problem.
I loved your paper,
thank
entitled
you.
Gout, Sex and Masculinity. So to talk about an impressive title. We will probably use that for the advert for this little Vox pop. But let's get into the nuts and bolts of it. For those who aren't familiar with sort of 18th century illnesses, what actually is gout?
So gout is not, I should say firstly, gout is not just an 18th century illness. It's a form of inflammatory arthritis, and it's now actually the most common form of inflammatory arthritis in the world. So rates of gout are actually on the increase. So in fact, the Gout Society, the UK Gout Society, is doing a lot of work trying to promote the fact that it's not just an 18th century disease.
Okay.
But in the 18th century, it's believed to have reached really almost epidemic kinds of proportions, because it's the reason why it happens, it's a form of inflammatory arthritis that's caused by a buildup of uric acid in the body. And foods and drinks containing something called purines essentially add to that uric acid buildup. So, and foods containing purines, it tends to be things like organ meats, shellfish, but in the 18th century would have also included things like fortified wines and other kinds of wines. So towards the end of the century, like the period that your podcast is interested in, there's a kind of, there was probably a big jump in the prevalence of gout in the population. And that's why it kind of gets associated with the 18th century in the kind of popular consciousness, if that makes sense.
Yeah, completely. So you've done a load of beautiful work with artistic representations, particularly caricatures. Fans of the show will know I'm a sucker for a caricature. You mentioned caricatures and I'm there. Before we get into that though, and the way in which people are sort of depicting gout within those caricatures, I just want to kind of dig into how society kind of regards gout as an illness. Is it sort of one of these illnesses that's associated with a particular class of individual? You know, if you're wealthy enough to be able to afford a certain lifestyle, then you're more prone to gout? Or is it just sort of something that's, because it's so universal, it's kind of regarded as almost a fact of life? How do people think about gout?
And you're talking about how did they think about it in the 18th century,
Exactly.
right? Not today.
Yeah.
So in the 18th century, because of that link with things like fortified wine, expensive imported food and meat, it gets associated with the upper classes. So the big kind of cultural history of the disease, Roy Porter and George Rousseau, their book Gout, there is subtitled The Patrician Malady, because of that association with the elite. It's also associated with men and masculinity, and even today, I think the latest figures estimate, we don't know for sure, but between 4 and 10 times as many men as women have gout. So then, as now, it gets associated with men, and it gets associated particularly with white men of a certain status. So it's seen very much as a kind of elite disease, essentially.
Okie doke. So moving on to caricatures, when we've got these geniuses of this age with their incredible kind of acerbic and really kind of needly way of representing a whole range of things, how does gout get depicted?
Okay. Well, obviously gout gets depicted as the kind of patrician disease. What I've become interested in my research is thinking about how some of those caricatures are essentially a way of questioning or undermining the kind of authority that people with gout tended to have or tended to be associated with. So effectively, the book that I'm writing is trying to argue that gout became a way not of reaffirming elite white male status, but actually of kind of subtly undermining it in certain ways. So in the paper I gave yesterday, I was talking about how that worked from the perspective of masculinity, attitudes towards gender and sexuality, and the ways in which gout gets associated not with a kind of virility, but by contrast with things like impotence and sexual dysfunction.
Absolutely fantastic. I think we will probably have you on the show for a much longer episode, but it is incredibly, if you hadn't worked out already, it's about 2 degrees here.
Yeah, it's cool.
So we're going to stop the interview there because I will probably turn into a block of ice, but thank you so much for your time.
No, it's a pleasure.
Really appreciate it.
Good luck with your Vox-pops.
Thank you.
Folks, do me a favour.
Go and review the show. Do it right now. 5 stars, please, and a comment, crucially. It takes you seconds, but it sends the algorithm wild and catapults us up the rankings. It's the most powerful thing you can do to support the hours of content that we provide for free. Love the show? Never want to miss the latest news? Sign up to our newsletter. The link is in the description, and get regular Napoleonic bulletins direct to your inbox. Looking for a present for the Napoleonicist in your life? We have a shop packed with Napoleonic Wars Pod merch. Check out the link in the description. And did you know you can now gift people subscriptions to the Patreon perks we offer? So, if you want to treat someone to our online course, exclusive Meet the Author sessions, green room access to recordings, and exclusive episodes, head to patreon.com/napwarspod to find out more. Much love to all our Patreon supporters who are enjoying a rejuvenated and revitalized offering of perks on Patreon. Head to patreon.com/the Napoleonic Wars Pod to find out how you can join a buzzing community of like-minded Napoleonic nerds who are enjoying things like courses, socials, book clubs, green room access to recordings, early releases, exclusive episodes, and much, much more. Their support is empowering us to triple our output and keep you entertained with Napoleonic nerdery on a near daily basis. Prices start from just £2 a month, so if you can spare the cost of a cup of coffee each month to support us, it would mean a huge amount and might even fund some documentary work. Shoutouts to our patrons who, at the time of recording in mid-January 2024, were in the mentioned in dispatches tier: Brendan Teeling, Beatrice de Graaf, Lynn Dawson, Jim Deary, Josh Keeney, Colin Fieldhouse, Stephen Colson, Jim Getz, Stephen Gillen, Hugh Brennan, Alistair Campbell-Grieve, Andy Meakin, Mark Anscombe, Rob Coughlin, Bruins Girl, Noah Fink, Miles Reedy, Nick Overland, Graham Goodwin, Chris Pramus, Anthony Gumbau, Anonymous American, James Fluick, Natasha Hobday, Rod Schwager, Chris Kimball, Gary Dennis, Ted Andrews, Richard Anderson, Arthur Forgy, Sam Moore, Wyatt Pollock, Carol Dixon Smith, Roland Shark, Giovanni, Jean-Baptiste Van Merlen, Darla Vincent, Peter Findley, Jeff Maple, Ian Harding, Indiana Fats, Joe Ayres, Robin Brasher, Daniel Friedman, and Jonathan Willets. The Admirals: John Haynes, Mike Guest, Rachel Stark, Mark Duckers, David Priest, David Maxwell, Graham Callister, Sean Sullivan, Stephen Ashworth, Kate Walcombe, Clemens Beman, Charles McKay, Reto the Sci-Fi Fan, Tim Day, Jason Moran, and Tim Pritchard. The Chiefs of Staff: Adam Coslin, the Marshals: Ryan Diamond and JC Kaiser, the Legion de Scholars: Dan Hazelwood and Bob Burnham, and in the Crown Yourself tier, Emperor of the First French Empire Todd Campbell and the Duke of Wellington Laird Campbell. We'll be back very soon, but until then, this has been the Napoleonic Wars Pod. On behalf of myself, Liam, Luke, Josh, and Zoe, take care of yourselves, folks. Stay well. And as always, thank you for listening.